We've seen Tristram, cleared the cathedral and catacombs, and faced off against the Butcher. It's time to complete our journey and enter the caves. Visually, the caverns are far different from the earlier levels. Large snaking magma pools cover the floor, the rooms are irregularly shaped, if you can even call them rooms, and the walls have been replaced with sheer rock faces. Thin wooden fences separate some areas, but nowhere is safe from open missile fire. And unlike before, some of the creatures on these levels are smart enough to open the doors too. Rocks, lava, and really big creatures galore, there's one key factor that separates the cave from the floors above. There is no longer anywhere to hide. No narrow doorways in a secluded stone room for us to exploit. We will have to fight mono to mono and maximize our use of mobility and knowledge of the AI's shortcomings to overcome the beasts down here. Or just use a bow and arrow and magic, but where's the challenge in that, eh? Fighting monsters in a congested passageway is now something you really have to look for. Found in the gaps on a lava river or in a wooden cage, you'll be vulnerable on all sides to ranged attacks though, and it's the spit and terrors that make the caves a hellish place to be. Each ball of vomit thrown our way will fall into a pool of acid on the floor, burning our feet. Under fire from those ranged baddies, the openness down here allows melee magma lords and horned demons to swarm us from all angles. It's here that our strategies will have to change. Before, our best defense was defense. Now pure offense is the way to go. Any creature that wanders too close, isolated from the pack, has to die quickly. It is only through this tactic that the warrior will have a decent chance. Create a trail of fiends, lure them behind a rock wall, take out 2 or 3, run away, and repeat. If you've ever played Call of Duty Zombies, you'll be all too familiar with the concept. We're running trains here, limiting how many we have to fight at once. And what do we get for all this hard work? Sadly, not much. Loot drops are dwindling by this point. While the piles of gold are larger, the chests and barrels are farther apart. The quests here do make up for that a little bit. Griswold seeks an anvil of fury with which he can craft Griswold's Edge, a unique blade that has one of the fastest attack speeds possible and a decent chance to knock targets back, vital for avoiding a death by stunlock if you accidentally find yourself enveloped by foes. The anvil was once part of the Hellforge, possibly contained within that cut location, but can now be found on an island defended by goatmen. And Adria is seeking a black mushroom.
Now that is a big mushroom.
If you find a fungal tome on level 9, she informs the hero to keep a lookout for them. A patch of mysterious shrooms can be found in the caves, where upon taking them back to the witch, she will ask us to visit Pepin about a special elixir she needs. Pepin in turn requires a demon brain to create the elixir. The next monster killed anywhere down below, whether in the cathedral or hell itself, will yield the brain we need. He rewards us with the special elixir, but Adrian no longer has any bloody use for it.
Oh, I was able to finish my brew without it. Why don't you just keep it?
We can drink away our woes of this wasted time by downing the elixir for a cool +3 to all of our attributes, essentially 2.5 free level ups. We made it. The depths of hell. Hell suffers from the same problem as the caves above. Too much room and not enough furniture to hide behind. Very large open rooms are connected by short, wide hallways. You can get surrounded in hell so fast it'll make your head spin. Half the reason for this is that there are a lot of creatures here, even on normal difficulty. The Diablo series and its clones are known for the power trip and slaughter they allow, decimating tens to hundreds of enemies on screen at any time. Diablo though wasn't really like that for the most part. More time is spent fighting a number we can count on one hand than a full legion's worth. Hell is the outlier on this occasion. We're now in true bullet hell territory. You'll have to accept that dodging all of these projectiles is futile. Invested in maximizing our resistant levels is necessary. Hugging the walls as much as we can and taking advantage of a corner to ensure we're only surrounded on 3 sides rather than 6 will be a lifesaver. It's all by design, of course. The devs wanted to amp up the speed of the game and focus on all-out combat. Slowing down the fighting to take advantage of an exploit was a strategy for new players. The caves in Hell was to test your metal and skill set. As Schaefer says, Hell became more about the chaos of gameplay. It wasn't as much about exploring a few holes, it was about amping up fights in open areas. Aesthetically, Hell is splendid, not in a beautiful way, but in how it takes inspiration from historical Gothic depictions and architecture. Huge bones have been used to construct the walls and staircases, damming reservoirs of the fiery magma, with a crimson decor populated of damned bodies suffering a fate worse than death. The skeletal walls with their flowing, curved nature reflect favourite artist of Schaeffer's Antoni Gaudi, specifically his architectural style used on the enigmatic Sagrada Familia in Barcelona. If you've ever wondered why some of the fallen ones and succubi are blue, well, here's a likely influence. Even these boiling cauldrons can be attributed to the Gothic art style. When seeking out best in slot loot drops, levels 13 to 16 of the dungeon will be our new home, especially the boss battle against Archbishop Lazarus, where 3 high tier enemies all have a chance to drop a gold or awesomely enchanted blue item. Chances are the strongest pieces of blue loot you ever saw on others over Battle.net were found by cyclically offing these guys. That or just farming the knights, drakes and succubi, all of which have a decent chance of dropping good loot, comparatively to the other levels at least. It's worth noting as well that unlike Diablo 2 and later, the difficulty level doesn't actually affect what loot drops, so if your hero is leveled up from Nightmare or Hell difficulty, clearing a level in search of an elite drop will take a few minutes at most back on normal difficulty, perfect for all the loot gremlins out there. You'll meet some of the toughest creatures down in the caves in hell, and as their average size grows larger, they'll be towering over you. Don't be surprised if you can't even see your character when surrounded. Some of them are carried over from the catacombs, like the horned demons, gargoyles and the overlords, but there are a multitude of new ones too. Magma demons for one, my favourite goofy fellas. I love Diablo's art style, but these ones never fail to get a chuckle out of me. Just look at this chubby rock boy. The magma demon is said to be born from the blood of Mephisto himself. During the great conflict between hell and heaven, a tremendous battle in the heart of Mephisto's fiery lair saw a group of brave warriors front an assault against the Lord of Hatred. One of these angelic soldiers struck a fierce blow that left the blood of Mephisto raining onto the crust of hell, where it boiled and formed into these powerful demons shaped from the molten rock. They're unique in melee combat for the excess damage they produce. Each attack animation uses both hands, allowing them to deal 2 times the damage per attack, and rarer still is their ability to perform at range as well as in close quarter combat. They'll chuck hot balls of molten rock our way, although unlike an arrow, this attack is slower and extremely visible, making it easy to dodge. Obviously they're immune to fire-based magic, so hitting them with chain lightning spam is the easiest way to leave them crumbling to the ground. Their electricity-based cousins, the lightning demons, attack via a powerful lightning ray. Just as with the magma demon, their frightening attack speed allows them to swing 2 attacks in the time it takes a warrior to make 1. Unfortunately for these devils, they're one of the few monsters omitted from the game's manual, leaving their lore up to interpretation. The only entry I can find for them comes from the Advanced Dungeons & Dragons RPG book, The Awakening. This Diablo-flavoured pen and paper RPG by the Wizards of the Coast released alongside Diablo 2, with quests and enemies based on those from Diablo 1. Whether this is canon or not is up to user interpretation, but it has never been referenced by any of the video games. The lore from The Awakening explains that long ago, a canny demon made a pact with captured air elementals. In return for their release, the elementals granted the demon immunity to thunderbolts of the skies. Over time, the demon gained the ability to channel the electricity and discharge it in devastating bolts of destruction. Millennia later, that demon's offspring birthed the lightning demon class of Hell's denizens. Vipers and drakes slither across the jagged cave floor and launch a swift barrage of attacks with the 2 swords they carry in their hands. Each attack in itself is not very powerful, but they can strike at an impressive rate, making them dangerous in packs where they can keep the hero stuck in a stun lock. Like with horned demons, they have a dash attack that sees them darting across the screen, preventing rogues from running away. Their resistances vary between types, so don't be confident in any single spell to work against all snakes. Attacking at range with mass effect spells such as Flame Wave or Chain Lightning is the wisest choice. Spit and Terrors are the descendants of the Hounds of Hell. After a violent battle, Lord Baal, the Lord of Destruction, enjoyed celebrating with his brothers by holding a disgusting feast of blood and human flesh. The variety of vile substances that these dog-like creatures consumed during these feasts twisted and warped their viscera into a diabolic species capable of spitting up caustic fluids and projecting them a considerable distance. Their bile has been known to eat through the strongest of armor and poison the most hardy of men. These acid beasts can be serious pains, especially for warriors in the caves. The more dangerous acid beasts on the deeper dungeon levels can spit farther than their weaker kin. Puddles of their venom will remain on the ground as a trap, and upon death, the beast's inner toxins eat through the now dead flesh, leaving a dangerous pool for those foolish enough to tread upon the corpse. Balrogs, taken directly from the writings of Tolkien, are fearsome winged devils and the biggest sprite in the game except for their master, Diablo. Contained within their enemy class, so to speak, are the Grey Vortex Lords, the natural leaders of lesser demons, and the bright red Balrogs themselves, who have been imparted with unholy power, making them one of Hell's greatest weapons in the fight over the mortal realm. Most commonly found in the levels of Hell, wielding curved swords and breathing fire in the form of an Inferno spell, they aren't the easiest foe to best, even more so with their resistance to magic across the board. They can still be damaged by it, but with 75% of your attack being mitigated, it isn't an ideal situation. Succubi come in the form of voluptuous female humanoids equipped with wings. Naturally inclined towards magic, they adore showering their enemies with the spell Bloodstar. Unlike the Bloodstar spell that the player can learn, they do not lose health each time they fire it, and have no fear in spamming it against you. As they do not have a melee attack, they'll flee like archers if you try and force them into hand-to-hand combat. They like to approach or retreat to a distance of 6 squares or so, a greater distance than other ranged foes tend to skirmish at, making them infamously troublesome for warriors. It'll take some time, but eventually you'll be able to anticipate their movements and lead them a bit into a corner where they can be struck down. Hell Knights are the main guardians of the upper levels of Hell. Clad in blackened armor, they were once knights in service of King Leoric. The mentally broken king had betrayed his men, and the ensuing battle between the royalists and the knights took them into the depths of the Tristram Cathedral, where they were forced to slay Leoric. In his last moments, the king brought down a curse upon those who betrayed him, condemning these knights into eternal damnation. All that was ever virtuous or honorable about the stewards was shattered forever. They have the most consistently high resistances, and their attack can be quite devastating, at least they're limited to melee. 2 of the 7 possible Hell Knight boss variants are tied to quests. The Warlord of Blood is the guardian to the staircase down to level 14. He was once a human who fought during the Sin War, where Heaven and Hell became aware of the mortal realm simultaneously. Hell discovered that mortals responded more to brute force and subtle coercion, terrorizing man into submission. Heaven fought to defend humanity against the demonic oppression, but all too often their austere methods only alienated those whom they sought to protect. The Warlord of Blood bent the knee to Hell, fighting alongside the Legions of Darkness, where he lost his humanity due to his insatiable lust for blood. Immune to fire, lightning, and most magic including Bone Spirit, Bloodstar, and Flash, he is the most difficult enemy the sorcerer ever has to face. Only Stone Curse and melee attacks will be able to take him down. Lochdanen is the antithesis to the Warlord of Blood. He was the captain of the Order of Light, and leader to King Leoric's knights. It was he who had to slay the Twisted King so he could answer for his treachery. Leoric's curse twisted the knights around Lochdanen, but so pure of heart was he that he maintained his composure, even as the spirits of hell tore at his soul. Trapped in the depths of hell, he fights the influences of Diablo, daring not to return to Tristram lest he succumb to the curse and lay waste to the remaining residents. Using what free will remains, he asks that the player find a golden elixir that he has come to discover can lift the curse and allow him to finally die. As I've mentioned, most of the uncut quests in Diablo are so basic that the only criticism you can give them is just that there's barely anything to them. Lochdanen's golden elixir actually does have a problem. It's missing its fail state. Pepin, the potion master who would know best in this situation, tells us that we should do as we're told and give the elixir to Lochdanen. To take it ourselves would be an unnecessary risk. Being a true gamer, I dropped the save game immediately and expected either an amazing buff, with the downside being dooming Lochdanen to insanity, or some kind of debuff and maybe even an insta-death as punishment. Nothing actually happens at all. Lagdanan doesn't even acknowledge our stupidity, which again leads us back to those choices and consequences. While action comes first in the abbreviation, it's a shame that the RPG part has been so watered down to where it's basically just meaning that we can level up and choose our character's progression to some degree. There still is a consequence to drinking the potion, even with the lack of dialogue, and that is that the quest can never be completed, and the hero can never attain the legendary reward. This is no different than failing, in inverted commas, any other quest, so it's not really a fail state, and does not fit the gravitas given by Pepin. We can assume that the effects of the golden elixir were cut, although there is no proof of that. It may have just been forgotten, which is worse. If we were to do as Lagdanan asks, he leaves behind his helm as a sign of gratitude. Increasing both strength and vitality, and being the piece of armor that holds plus 50% to all resistances, as well as being the only great helm requiring no strength requirement to be equipped, the Veil of Steel is arguably one of the most useful unique items for any character, but especially so for warriors who can afford the mana penalty. Even then, the minus 30 to mana will only be an issue for a rogue build. A sorcerer can easily replace the lost points with other enchanted items. Finally, we have come to the last of the common monsters in Diablo's extensive bestiary, the mages unique to Lazarus' domain and level 16, the final level of hell and the realm of the Lord of Terror. The counselors, magistrates, cabalists, and advocates are some of the most annoying enemies in the game, only because they take the advanced gameplay of the sorcerer and use it against you. Although they are glass cannons with very few health points, they'll phase warp across the screen whenever you get too close. Your best bet is to strike fast and cross your fingers that you inflict a stun. When they are recoiling, they are prevented from teleporting. This makes rogues the best at dispatching them, while warriors will look like headless chickens chasing them around. Sorcs will have to fight fire with fire and beat them at their own game, casting spells faster than them and teleporting more frequently. They are resistant to magic, but only the uniques have any immunities. By this point in the game though, you too should have near to max resistances, making this an equal battle. One of the mages you must face is none other than the Archbishop I've name dropped a few times already. Along with Diablo himself, he is one of the two only mandatory boss battles in the game. Acting as ambassador for the cathedral before his corruption, he was a close friend and advisor to King Leoric. A great orator, he's remembered keenly by Jillian as being a kind man, and Pepin notes that he always seemed to care so much for the people of Tristram. Not so trusting, Adria sensed a conflict within his being.
He poses a grave danger and will stop at nothing to serve the powers of darkness which have claimed him as theirs.
Trapped by the Haradrim centuries ago, Diablo remained placated deep beneath Tristram. As time passed, so did the strength of the ancient being grow and his prison weaken. Sensing that freedom was within his grasp, Diablo entered the nightmares of the Archbishop and lured him into the dark subterranean labyrinth. In his terror, Lazarus raced through the abandoned hallways until he at last came to the chamber of a burning soulstone, where the Lord was trapped. Against his will, Lazarus freed Diablo by shattering the jewel-like jail. By the way, I'm skirting across a lot of the lore here, as we'll come back to it in much more depth. Unlike other fantasy game series where the first entry is often quite bare bones in the story department, Diablo is anything but. Now free, but still weak, Diablo required a body to anchor himself to the mortal plane. He chose King Leoric as a worthy vessel, using dark magic to possess the king's mind. For months, Leoric fought the voices in his head. Lazarus, too now swayed by the evil charms, became closer to the king, hoping to weaken the king's resolve and allow Diablo to claim the body for his own. Over time, the alienation of the mind had succeeded, and Leoric turned on his closest allies, calling his knights traitors and opening war against the honorable contingent of warriors. Failing to take over Leoric's body, however, and with the king soon to be slain by Lagdanan, Lazarus frantically aided the Lord of Terror in taking a new, if not slightly weaker vessel, Leoric's son, Albrecht. Tristram had lost their king, their knight protectors, and now the prince was missing too. Appearing from the cathedral, having sacrificed Albrecht in a ritual to give Diablo a body, Lazarus riled the people of Tristram into a frenzied mob over lies that they would band together to vanquish the devilish foes that are claiming the dungeon beneath the church. He led them, pitchforks in hand, into the depths. It was with this lie that he offered the mob to the demons, notably to the Butcher. Those that returned included Ogden, Griswold, Wirt, the boy's soon-to-be-deceased mother, and Farnham. The hero will come across Lazarus' staff on the 15th level, where they must use the scepter to open a portal to the Archbishop's realm. Entering the red portal, we find ourselves in the Unholy Altar. This boss level sees us battling mages and succubi as we must find vile books that teleport us into adjacent rooms. Following the tried and true game design rule of 3, the third book warps our hero into a sacrificial chamber in front of Lazarus, accosted on both sides by his succubi allies. Just before that though, a cutscene plays, showing the Tristram Cathedral, a church office inside, and the Archbishop Lazarus resembling at first a normal man, until his eyes glow red with evil intent. It's about to go down.
Abandon your foolish quest. All that awaits you is the wrath of my master. You are too late to save the child. Now you will join him in hell.
I'd like to say that this is a hard-fought battle that feels satisfactory to beat, but that would be a lie. Any veteran of the game can tell you that firewall spam is overpowered as hell. Even before Lazarus can finish his monologue, he'll succumb to ashes as flames engulf him. The hard bit is actually getting into his chamber, but once you're there, and as long as you have scrolls of firewall or have learned the spell, it's smooth sailing. With Lazarus dead, we're led to Diablo's lair. Upon entering the level, an ominous sounding demonic chant plays. Reversing this audio reveals the decidedly non-demonic message of
Eat your vegetables and rush after every meal.
This is satirization of the satanic panic from the 60s and 70s, where people feared that famous musical artists were hiding messages in their music to convince young audiences to join cults or commit heinous sins like premarital sex or smoking weed. The devs were clearly fans of these hidden messages. Another can be found on the launcher, barely visible between Diablo's horns. By editing the image, the faded text left over reads "By War 2" and "Natalie Portman rocks." It's not 100% certain what the former refers to, but it's most likely trying to hypnotize us into buying Warcraft 2. The second message can be left up to interpretation. Speaking with Cain after defeating Lazarus will begin our final mission. Up until this point, Cain had held out hope that Lazarus was keeping Albrecht for some nefarious need, but with the Archbishop dead, he now fears the worst, that Diablo is endangering the boy king or has even killed him. He recounts how centuries ago Diablo was trapped, and that if we, the hero, do not stop him, the Dark Lord will surely sow chaos through the realm of mankind. Seemingly, the Elder Scholar is not aware that Diablo had been trapped within a soul stone and not in his mortal form. Regardless of Cain's apparent lack of knowledge on this matter, the objective is clear. Level 16 is littered with Blood Knights, the strongest form of the Hell Knight, and Advocate Mages. Nothing new, but nothing easy to deal with either. Among the knights is their dreadful leader, Sir Gorash. Overcome by insanity at the sight of his murdered skeletal King Leoric rising from his tomb, he forms the last line of defense for the Lord of Terror. It's a poor defense too, with Gorash being far weaker than the Warlord of Blood we vanquished 2 stories above. I advise that you clear every minor mob before opening Diablo's chamber. The barrage of attacks from the mages and the knights forcing a constant dance to avoid their swarms will only make this final battle more difficult than it need be. And difficult, it is not. I have seen some people online struggle with this boss fight, but with just a little bit of preparation, he's not much to be afraid of. For one, he shares his enemy AI with the Magma Demons, meaning that the Dark Lord is a bit of a coward, choosing to keep at a distance and fire his Apocalypse spell at you rather than close the distance. His unique spell has been intelligently designed, causing pure physical damage. Maximizing your own resistances will be futile, but with it being a ranged attack, it's both easy to avoid and easier still to keep out of an effective range, leading Diablo to never fire the thing in the first place. Due to him not being immune to fire, in what feels like an oversight, the first strategy many will rely on to destroy the Butcher is the exact strategy that will overcome the final boss. Spamming Firewall and waiting for the fireworks is all that one must do to end the game. a real anticlimax. If it's leveled enough too, the Holy Bolt spell can decimate him even faster with some well-placed shots. He does have the highest hit points and AC in the game, fittingly assigned at 1666 HP on normal difficulty, but that will only slow down melee or arrow-based damage. Magic will quickly compound to drain his health pool to 0. In reality, he just isn't the end boss the game deserved. He's the namesake of the game. I shouldn't be able to finish him off with ease. Even without using any spells, I smacked him to death without much effort by stun-locking him against the wall. It's not that this wasn't tested for. If you can recall, a contest was even held at Condor offering to pay $100 to the first developer who could kill Diablo. Despite this testing, I can't help but feel that the battle is far too comfortable. Perhaps that's because I played the game to completion, clearing each floor, a strategy the playtesters eager to beat the game may not have employed. The payoff comes from having completed the game itself, rather than defeating a difficult enemy at the end. As the demon falls, blood spewing from his torso, the closing cutscene plays. Diablo himself may not be a very memorable encounter, but the twist seen here has stuck around, and still has people using spoiler warnings online 25 years later, which I'll oblige. If you haven't finished the game and you didn't pay attention to the lore in Diablo 2 and 3, then avert your eyes or skip ahead to the timestamp shown on screen. Albrecht wasn't in danger. He was the danger. Lazarus had plunged a piece of the shattered soulstone into the boy's forehead, allowing Diablo to possess the prince with ease after he had failed to consume Leoric. Now defeated, the demonic form of Diablo falls away to reveal the child gasping his last breath as his soul leaves the mortal realm. Our hero approaches to release the stone. We should take this to Cain for his wisdom, but such an evil cannot be trusted. Who knows what this gem and the devil trapped within may do when brought to the surface? No, someone has to keep this stone safe. Someone strong enough to contain its evil. Someone with experience defeating the corruption of hell. And so the hero takes it upon themselves to trap Diablo, fade into the cloaked figure of the Dark Wanderer as the narrator describes the hero's fate. The whispers of the damned echoed in their ears as they feel Diablo himself clawing his way up from the dark recessions of their own soul. But the hero had succeeded. Diablo was contained, for now at least. The cinematics were created by an internal team at Blizzard, the same ones that had worked on Warcraft 1 and 2. Disconnected from the development, they reported to Metzen, who was writing the story. Diablo's own creators were as much in the dark of the story's direction as the players were. Blizzard North just kind of had to listen to what we did as far as cinematics. They just basically rolled up with what we gave them. They wanted to concentrate on making a game and not on cinematics. Brevik admitted that Diablo's final cinematic scene caught him and the team by surprise.
We're all crowded around the desk and we're looking at this thing, and then he jams the gem in his forehead and all of us are like, what the hell did we just watch? What was that? That doesn't make any sense at all. Is that cool? I don't know about this. And so we had a little bit of an argument about whether or not we were going to have this or not, and whether or not this could be the official ending.
Eric Schaefer recounts how Blizzard North were pretty much mouth agape for a couple of minutes as we digested what we had just seen. They eventually came around to the cutscene, not that they had much choice with how close the release date was approaching, and Brevik now admits he likes it in hindsight. Cinematic artist Dwayne Stinnett remembers how it was himself and a fellow artist who came up with the idea of stabbing the soulstone into the hero's head. He can't remember if Metzen was originally on board with the idea. Metzen's idea of the soulstone wasn't intended to be taken on by the hero so literally, but after completing the scene with a mission to make the most fucked up ending they could, Stinnett was surprised to see that Metzen liked the idea and stuck to it, writing the Dark Wanderer conclusion to tie up the story. There wasn't enough time to change the cutscene if Blizzard North did protest, certainly not now that Metzen had made it an intricate part of the story, but they did have time to re-render the ending cutscene to reflect the three class choices. Although this is clearly rushed, the characters use the same armor between each version, and only the skin tone for the sorcerer is changed, not his facial features. The rogue and warrior scenes are nigh on identical too, apart from the vocal changes, with the rogue screaming at a higher register. Despite these minor changes, the final game itself never played the variations due to a bug, resulting in the ending always showing the warrior's cutscene regardless of who you were playing. This was rightfully pointed out in a Computer Gaming World review, where Greg Fortune accurately writes, "This is supposed to be role-playing, right? So why do we see the same movie played whether they were playing the male warrior or the female rogue? The experience and the reward should be different depending on the character you play." I'm unsure if the minor differences between the scenes would have been enough to please Fortune, but it is a shame that this bug further hurt the lackluster Diablo fight. Still though, he, among almost every other reviewer, loved the twist, and I can't blame them. It alone led to the interesting lore and story behind Diablo 2, with the Soul Stone not destroyed but instead contained. It ensured the perfect scenario for a sequel to exist. The bug that caused the warrior ending to play is often used by fans to explore the lore retcons in Diablo 2 as well, where the warrior is the only one of the 3 heroes to become the Dark Wanderer. Criticism for Diablo from official reviewers is few and far between, with contemporary criticism reflecting my own critiques throughout this video. The game has aged, and when compared to the free-flowing nature of other ARPGs, its grid-based nature harms its gameplay. CVG reviewed the game quite late in 2001, with their main points being more so a critique of ARPGs as a whole than Diablo itself. Although with Diablo regularly attributed with rebirthing that genre, I guess it's fair that it takes some of the blame. As Blizzard have attempted to provide us with the perfect blend of everyone's favourite RPGs, the end result is a bit watered down. After working your way through the first 5 or 6 quests, it soon becomes apparent that all the gameplay involves exploring and hitting things. If you're a warrior, you hit them with something sharp and heavy. If you're a rogue, you shoot things at them, and if you're a sorcerer, you zap them with magic. There's nothing in Diablo that we haven't seen before. There are virtually no new ideas here at all. What it does do though, and what makes it so damn good, is nick all the best bits from everyone else's games and then refine them to the point of near perfection. And that is exactly why Diablo is so great to me. I couldn't have said it any better myself. Diablo didn't necessarily invent anything. It didn't strive to be something it couldn't. It didn't try to break new ground. It took a tried and proven style of game that had fallen out of favor, modernized it with a late 90s visual and audio makeover, streamlined the gameplay with action in mind, and spawned a series that continues to this day, even if mismanagement and poor decisions make some of us wish it didn't. Despite the rather pale in-game storyline, basic quests, and fair amount of repetition, Diablo is a must for anyone interested in plain ARPG fun. It's a bit rough around the edges, and Diablo 2 is better in almost every way, but its age wasn't enough to keep me from being enthralled in my quest to clear every level and face the devil himself.